All right, everyone, welcome back to the spring semester, or like I like to call it, your second semester of freshman English, ninth grade English. Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone back from winter break. Hope everyone had a great winter break and everything. And today we're going to be actually starting a new novel, and we're going to go ahead and start reading the first two chapters of this novel, guys. It is called Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. It is by an author, David Lubar. I guess that you guys can kind of relate to this novel. You guys are freshmen. You guys know what you are going through right now. I know high school can give you the Jeepers Creepers, the Jitterbitties, whatever you guys want to call it. But you can relate a lot to Scott Hudson, which is our main protagonist. So without further ado, let me go ahead and take attendance and make sure that everyone is here today. Let's go right ahead. All right, Kayla. All right, guys, so since you're all new back, winter break is still not out of your system. You think you're still in Disney. You're thinking Universal. What I want you guys to do is raise your hand every time I call out your name. Levanten las manos si los llamo. Levanten las manos para poder marcar que están aquí. Presente. Kayla. Thank you, Kayla. Antonio. Thank you, Antonio. Jason. Thank you, Jason. Janet. Perfect. Thank you, Janet. Giovanni. Gracias, Giovanni. Brenda. Daniel. Michelle. Paul. Ana Bárbara. Amanda. Adam. Lewis. Thank you, Lewis. Dana. Hi, Dana. Welcome back. Alex. Aile. Michael. Thomas. Kimberly. And finally, Jasmine. Okay, so looks like everybody's here. Looks like we got a full class. So like I said, welcome back to Freshman English. And like I said, we're going to start reading our lesson and doing activities on the new second semester on Sleeping Freshmen Never Lie. Great book. Y'all can relate to it. It's very funny, very lighthearted. Let's go ahead and start reading the first chapters. Chapter 1. We plunged toward the future without a clue. Tonight, we were four sweaty guys heading home from a day spent shooting hoops. Tomorrow, I couldn't even guess what would happen. All I knew for sure was that our lives were about to change. Any idea what it would be like? I asked. My mind kept flashing images of cattle. They shuffled up on a ramp, unaware that their path led to a slaughterhouse. A Tomb Raider movie, Patrick said, or Indiana Jones. It'll be the same as always, Kyle said. Boring and stupid. Patrick shook his head. No, Tomb Raider for sure. We'll get eaten alive if we aren't careful, but we'll be surrounded by amazing stuff. Right, amazing stuff, Mitch said. He rubbed his hands together as he were about to dive into a juicy burger. High school girls, hundreds of them. Like we have a chance with them, Patrick said. Looks like Patrick is not very optimistic. I heard the seniors snag all the hot girls. Now when I'm around, Kyle slicked his hair back with his right hand, then made a fist and flexed his biceps. Girls melt when I get near them. Okay, Kyle, whatever you say, boy. Mostly from the fumes, Patrick said. What about the classes, I asked as Kyle shoved Patrick towards the curb. Think they'll be hard? Who cares? Mitch said. You just have to show up and you'll pass. We reached my house, second from the corner on Willow Street. The guys lived on the other side of the neighborhood. I realized that the next time we saw one another, we'd be freshmen at J.P. Singer High. Freshmen, unbelievable. Fresh, definitely. Men, not a clue. I turned towards my friends. Bye, Patrick said. Mitch grunted a farewell. Kyle's hand twitched in a lazy wave. I wanted to say something more meaningful than, see you later. There they were, right in front of me. Kyle, who I had known since kindergarten. Patrick, who I had met in the second grade. And Mitch, who moved here in the sixth grade. We've done everything together, all throughout middle school. The perfect words were so obvious, I couldn't help smiling as I spoke. One for all, and all for one. The phrase was greeted with silence around us. I couldn't hear the last crickets of summer chirping faintly. The crickets, too, seemed puzzled. One for all, I said again. Mitch frowned. One for all what? Is that like a Marine slogan? Kyle asked. No, I think it's on coins. It's that Latin stuff, right? Pedro said. It's Pluto Pup something or other. It's from the Three Musketeers, I told him. It's a famous book. 3 pairs of eyes stared at me without a glimmer. There's a movie too, I said. These guys stuck together no matter what. Colin looked around, tapped his thumb against the tip of each of his fingers, and said, there are 4 of us. Absolutely, that's what's so perfect. There were 4 musketeers, too. That's stupid, Mitch said. Somebody couldn't count. Well, anyhow, let's stick together tomorrow, I said. You bet, Patrick said. For sure, Mitch said. One for all and all for me, Kyle said. He turned to go. See you later, I called as they walked off. Mom and Dad were side by side on the living room couch. The TV was on, but it didn't look like they were watching anything. They stopped talking when I walked in. What's up? I asked. Hi, Scott, Dad said. You have fun with your friends? Yeah, I noticed his eyes kept shifting from me to Mom. Something going on? Tomorrow is the big day, Mom said. You must be excited. Now I got it. They were stressed out from worrying whether they were headed for another disaster, which was one of the milder words to describe my brother's, Bobby's high school experience. I'm sure I'll do fine. I couldn't almost guarantee I wouldn't skip history 17 straight days in a row, get nabbed 9 times for public displays of affection with 9 different girls, or pull off any other stunts that helped end Bobby's high school experience half a year earlier than planned. I'm really excited about school. Good. Mom smiled with way more joy than the situation seemed to call for. Do you want me to make you lunch? I'll buy your favorite rose. No. Try to hide my shoulder as I imagined carrying a paper bag into the cafeteria. Thanks. I think you'd rather buy lunch, Dad said. I nodded, shot Dad a grateful look, and headed upstairs. I wanted to get my stuff ready, and they probably wanted to talk more about how there was nothing to worry about because I was different from Bobby. Man, was that ever true. Bobby was almost as tall as Dad, good with tools, strong enough to carry 2 sacks of concrete at once, 80 pounds on one shoulder. That sort of load would snap my spine. Girls chase him like he was some kind of movie star. He's gotten all the good genes. I was a run who had to think hard to remember which way to turn a wrench. I put my stuff in my backpack, then I grabbed the books I bought last Saturday. Dad and I had gone to the flea market up near Stroudsburg. We go there at least once a month when it's open. He looks for tools, I look for books. I snag a whole stack of Robert Heinlein novels for $2 and a field guide to North American game fish for 50 cents. Dad had gotten some huge clams for $5. That's the weird thing about flea markets. Books and tools seem to cost about the same amount per pound. I crammed the novel into one of my bookcases, then sat on my bed and leafed through the field guide, looking at the color photos of smallmouth bass and imagining landing a 4-pounder while wading into Delaware. Before I went to sleep, I called Bobby at his apartment to see if I could get any advice from him about school, which I guess was like asking General Custer for combat tips. It didn't matter. He wasn't in. That night, I dreamed I was field testing flamethrowers for the Army. In a supermarket, I woke to a smell of bacon. First day of high school. I couldn't believe it was finally here. Dad had already left for work. Mom was sitting on the tool by the kitchen counter reading a magazine. But as my nose had told me, she had been hard at work creating breakfast. Good morning, she said. She slipped the magazine under the newspaper. Hungry? Starved. Mom always made blueberry pancakes and bacon on the first day of school. As she loaded up my plate with enough protein and carbs to fuel Mars mission, I glanced at the corner of the magazine where it stuck out from the under paper. Mom didn't usually hide stuff. It was probably one of those supermarket things with stories about aliens and looked like Elvis and kids who had been raised in the desert by giant toads. Mom got herself a plate and joined me as I tried to make a dent in my stack. We didn't talk much while we ate. She seemed to be a million miles away. You okay? I asked. The too big smile reappeared. I can still make you lunch. There's plenty of time. Maybe tomorrow. I glanced at the clock. Gotta go. I grabbed my backpack and headed for the bus stop. I was the first one there. Should have brought a book to help kill time, but that would immediately mark me as a real geek. Eventually, I heard a noise in the distance. Hey, Scotty! Mouth Kandeski shouted when he was still half a block away. What you think? High school is still the big time. We're in high school. Man, that's cool. That's so cool. He drove in a trail of words like a leaking milk carton as he closed the distance between us. My best guess is that he can only breathe when he's talking. Hi, Mouth, I said when he reached me. His name's Loudon. Bad move on his parents' part. He got called Loudmouth the moment he started school. It was shortened to Mouth soon after that. We didn't hang out or anything, but I guess since I was one of the few kids on the planet who never screamed, shut up, at him, he figured I was interested in what he had to say. I was more interested in wondering what would happen to him if I clamped a hand over his mouth. Maybe he'd swell up and explode. Maybe the top of his head would pop off, sending off dorky orange ball cap into orbit where it belonged. Maybe the words would shoot out of his butt with so much force his pants would rip. Let them clamped. Mouth had plenty more to discuss. I'll tell you, I can't wait. This is awesome. I'm kind of nervous. Are you nervous? I mean, I'm not scared or nothing, but just kind of nervous. You know, nervous isn't the same as scared. It's something like the buzz you get from a lot of coffee I drank 8 cups once. I started drinking coffee this summer. Drink coffee? It's not bad if you put in enough sugar. Past mouth, I spotted more freshmen, familiar faces from Tom Paine Middle School looking like Easter eggs in their new clothes. Then one familiar face, a goddess, an honest-to-goodness goddess. The first sight of her, even from a distance, I felt like I'd been stuck in the gut of an icicle. I wanted to gather branches and build a shrine or slay a mastodon and offer the finest pieces, fresh from the hunt. Whoa, it's Julia, Mouse said, breaking the spell. Hey, Julia, you look different. Well, Mouth was right. It was Julia Baskins. I'd known her most of my life, and I hadn't recognized her. She was one of those kids who blend into the background, like me, I guess. Well, the background has lost the blending. She was gorgeous. She always kept her dark brown hair in a braid. Now it was cut short and shaggy with a couple of highlights. She was wearing makeup that did amazing things to her eyes, and a sweater and khakis that did amazing things to the rest of her. She looked taller, too. You're wearing contacts, right? Mouth called to her. I wanted contacts, but Mom said I had to wait until I got more responsible. Just because I let my braces get gunked up and I had all those cavities and lost my retainers 3 times. Well, really just twice. The other time my dog ate it, so that doesn't count. You have a dog? Julia shook her head and managed to squeeze in the word cat. I don't have a cat. I have an Airedale, Bob said. He's not purebred, but that's what we think he mostly is. He jammed his hand into his jacket pocket, fished around, and pulled out a broken Oreo. Want a cookie? No, thanks. Julie slipped away from Mouth and joined her friend Kelly Holberg near the curb. I worked my way closer and tried to think of some excuse to talk to her. I never got the chance. Chapter 2, guys. A hush fell over the cluster of freshmen, cloaking us with that same sense of dread that ancient civilizations must have felt during the solar eclipse. But we weren't awestruck by a dragon eating the sun. We were facing a much less mythical danger. Older kids, an army of giants. I just spent a year in 8th grade towering over the 6th and 7th graders. Okay, that was an exaggeration. I only towered over the short ones. But I wasn't used to being at the bottom of the food chain at the wrong end of the growth spurt. I felt like the towel boy for the Sixers. As the loud, joking, shoving mob reached us, I slipped towards the back of the group and pretended to adjust my watch. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a kid kneel to tie his shoe. That earned him a kick in the rear from the member of the mob as he passed by. Mouth kept talking. Big mistake. The giants closed in on him and dumped the contents of his backpack onto the sidewalk and threw his hand down the storm drain. Hey, come on, guys, Mouth said as his possessions spilled across the concrete. Come on. Hey, stop it. Come on. That's not funny. We're all classmates, right? We all go to the same school. Let's be friends. The scary thing was the biggest kids didn't seem angry. I'm pretty sure they trashed the stuff by reflex like they were scratching an itch or something, squashing a bug. Some people step on the ants. Some people step on freshmen. I guess it was better to be a freshman than an ant. At least the seniors didn't have giant magnifying glasses. Matt was spared from further damage by the arrival of transportation. With an ear-killing squeal breaks, the bus skidded to the curb, bathing us in the thick aroma of diesel fuel, motor oil, and a faint whiff of cooked antifreeze. Trevor opened the door and glared at Mouth as the mob pushed her way aboard. Pick up that mess, kid, he shouted. When I walked past Mouth, I thought about giving him a hand. You're holding us up, the driver shouted. He kept his glare aimed into my direction while he took a gulp of coffee from a grimy thermos cup. Great, all the types of drivers in the world, I had to get a shower. I hurried down the bus, hoping to grab a seat near Julia. No such luck. As dangerous as the bus stop is, at least there are places to run. There's no escape from the bus. It's like a traveling version of a war game. All that's missing is a paintball guns and maybe a couple of foxholes. I could swear one of the kids in the back was in his 20s. I think he was shaving. As had a friend, that wasn't much better since every kid who got on the rest of the stops had a chance to smack my head. Should have grabbed a seat behind Sheldon Merbauer. There was something about his head that attracted SWATs. Everyone within 2 or 3 rows of him was pretty safe. For the moment, all I could do was try and learn invisibility. I opened my backpack and searched for something to keep me busy. Now I really wish I had brought that field guide or anything else to read. All I had was blank notebooks, pens, and pencils. I grabbed a notebook. The driver was shouting at a new batch of kids as they got on. Then he shouted at Mouth, who was sitting in the front seat. Shut up, kid! You're distracting me. Last year was so much better. I had the greatest driver, Louis. He used to drive a city bus. That gave me an idea. I started writing. It didn't cut down on the smacks as much as I hoped, but it kept my mind off them. 20 minutes and 1 full page later, we reached J.P. Zenger High. No pushing, the driver shouted as we scrambled out. High school, Mouse said, staggering to the side as someone pushed him out of the way. Here we come. This is going to be great. We're going to rule this place. Wrong, Mouth. Wrong, 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 wrong. There are so many buses, the parking lot smelled like a truck stop. On top of that, the lot was jammed with a long line of parents dropping off kids and a wave of seniors driving their own cars with varying degrees of skill. I stood on the curb for a moment, my eyes wide and my head tilted back. I've seen it 1,000 times before, and I never really looked at it. Zinger High was huge. It sprawled out like a hotel that had a desperate desire to become an octopus. Every couple of years, the town built another addition. School mascot should have been a bulldozer. My homeroom was located as far as possible from the area. I got lost twice. The first time I asked some older kid for directions, he sent me off to what turned out to be the furnace room. I assumed it was an example of upper man class humor. The janitor, who had awakened from a nap, yelled at me. I reached my desk just before the late bell rang. I didn't see a familiar face in the homeroom. The teacher passed out blank assignment books. Then he gave us our schedules. I scanned mine, hoping to get at least a clue about what lay ahead. I had no idea what the H or CP stood for, since there was no teacher who listed for lunch. I grabbed the pen and wrote Mr. Emu. My first class turned out to be as far as possible from homeroom, and nearly impossible to find, but at least I knew enough not to ask for directions. 10 minutes into my freshman year, I had already learned an important lesson. When I reached the homeroom, I finally saw a face that I recognized, the same face I had recognized earlier. Julie was in my English class, along with Kelly and a couple of other kids I knew. Still no sign of Kyle, Patrick, or Mitch. I grabbed a seat 2 rows away from Julia. Things were looking up. Welcome to Honors English, Mr. Frank said. He was a short guy with a beard and sideburns and the sort of rugged face you see on cable hunting shows. Instead of a camouflage outfit, he was wearing a light blue buttoned shirt with his sleeves rolled up but no tie or jacket. I hope you all love to read. He grabbed a stack of paperbacks from his desk and started tossing them like literary frisbees. I noticed a Marine's tattoo on his left forearm. He also passed out textbooks which weighed about 9 pounds. Fortunately, he didn't toss it. Otherwise, there'd probably be a death or two in the back row. Instead of reading in class, we started discussing how to define a short story. It was actually fun. It didn't say much. I didn't want anyone to think I was some kind of brain, which I'm not. I wasn't even sure how I had ended up in honors class, but it was because of the test we'd taken at the end of the late year. Mr. Frank kept asking all sorts of questions to keep up the discussion. At one point, he said, "What do you think is easier to write, a short story or a novel?" I almost raised my hand. I've read so many both. I figured I had a good answer. A story was harder because you could wander around. You had to stick to the subject, at least in a good story. It was a matter of focus. Most of the kids said that a novel would be harder because it was longer. I wasn't sure whether to speak up or just keep quiet. Then Julie raised her hand. "I think stories are harder," she said. "In a novel, the writer can wonder. In a story, the writer has to stay focused." Right! Oh, great. I hadn't meant to shout. But it was so amazing to find her. We felt the same way. Everyone was looking at me. "I agree," I said in a quieter voice, as I slunk down in my seat. Wonderful. Now she'd think I was some kind of suck-up. At the end of the period, Mr. Franco wrote our homework on the board and passed out our vocabulary book. 1 class, 3 books. This was not a good sign. There was a dash for the door when the bell rang. The hall was jammed with freshmen walking in circles, ellipses, zigzags, and other patterns that marked us all clueless members of the lost generation, or lost members of the clueless generation. I saw Patrick in the study hall, but the teacher wouldn't let us talk. For some reason, he thought we should be studying. We made color charts in our art class, which was pretty interesting. On the way out, Mr. Savage gave us a photocopy of an article about Van Gogh. I was beginning to calculate my reading load by the pound instead of the page, but that was okay. I could handle it. So that was the first 2 chapters of Sleeping Freshman Never Lie. So now I hope that you guys enjoyed those first 2 chapters and the way that I read it and the way that I express enthusiasm for all of you. I'm going to break you guys off now in groups, okay? So we're going to do a group activity. And the way we're going to do this group activity, guys, go ahead and get my marker, is that I hope you guys remember the literary devices that we covered last semester. We have some of them. No, we all remember imagery. So imagery. What do you see? What do you feel? What makes you? What appeals to you? To your senses, your 5 senses, your taste, your touch, your smell, your sight, your hearing. What is it, guys, that breaks you off? Okay, so imagery, I want to break it off for number 1. Group number 1. So what I want to do, you guys, is that I want to break you guys off. Now that we read the books, now that we understand everything completely that we read from the book, I want you guys to break off in groups. That way, you guys are going to do a 5 to 7 minute presentation after we're done with the activity. And each one of you is going to get a different literary device. Each group is going to get a different literary device. And you guys are going to find elements of those literary devices in the 2 chapters that we just read. Okay, so number 1, I want group number 1 to have imagery. And my group number 1 students are Kayla, Brenda, Amanda, and Adam. So break into groups, guys, and be able to find your group mates and get along. Foreshadowing will be our second one, guys. Now, I like to think as foreshadowing, you guys are my little fortune tellers. What elements in the book can you guys find that will lead something, or think that something will ensue in the future, something interesting, some type of climax, some type of interesting, great point in the story that you know is going to be a definitive point in the story to continue on. So you guys are my foreshadowers. Group number 2 is going to go to Antonio, to Daniel, to Antonio, Daniel, Aile, and Michael. You guys are my 2. You guys are my foreshadowers, or like I like to call my little fortune tellers, who are going to tell me the future based on what you read or based on what you think. Number 3, we're guys are going to go into juxtaposition. Juxtaposition is going to go back to my group number 3. So guys, as you can recall from last semester, juxtaposition basically is when you have an element of the story that gives a direct comparison or contrast, kind of like an oxymoron, but a little different. So for example, phrases that you find in the text that are little, like they contradict each other. So for example, you got beauty and ugliness. You find that written, beauty and ugliness. Family and outsiders. Youth and experience. When have you ever seen someone who's young and experienced? You can't find them. Obviously, it's going to be older people. But that's basically what you want for juxtaposition. In group number 3, juxtaposition is going to go to Jason, Michelle, Luis, and Thomas. Guys, get into your groups and go right ahead and start doing that. My 4th writing device is going to be personification. As you guys can remember, personification is going to go to my group number 4, giving an idea or giving an object life. My alarm yelled at me to get up in the morning. The wind howled. Wind doesn't howl. It's just a form to personify it, meant to describe, hey, yo, the wind howled. Or my alarm yelled at me in the morning to wake me up. That doesn't happen. Your alarm doesn't yell at you. But that is what personification is. So group number 4, please break up into groups and find those elements so you guys can do your presentation. Group number 4 is going to be Janet. It's going to be Paul. It's going to be Dana. And it's going to be Kimberly. Go ahead, guys, and break up to your groups and start doing that, okay? Last but not least, I have my little symbologist, even though it's not a real thing, but symbolism. It's going to go to group number 5. My group number 5 students are Josvani, Anawabara, Alex, and Jasmine. So guys, remember that essentially what symbolism is just giving some kind of way to represent an object, to represent something. Red rose to represent beauty, to represent love. The color black to represent death, to represent sorrow, tragedy, something of that sort. Guys, find that in a group. I'm gonna give you guys these little handouts where you guys are gonna follow the instructions of what you need to do in your group activity. Once you're done, I'll be walking around once you guys are doing that. Once you guys are doing this and listening to all that, if you guys have any questions, I'm here to help, obviously. Mr. P is always here to help you guys. Find that, and then once we're almost done with our block schedule and our block period here, we're gonna go ahead and present it. 5 to 7 minute presentation, really short presentation. You guys are gonna go out there, you guys are gonna pretend that you're the teachers, and I'm just gonna sit in the back, I'm gonna watch you guys, I'm gonna assess you guys, and see what kind of questions you guys might have, and you guys basically teach the class. Where do you find imagery? Where do you find foreshadowing? Where do you find juxtaposition in the story? Where do you find personification and symbolism? For home learning, final announcement that I want to make before we do this, because I know we're not going to have enough time when you guys do your presentations, and you guys obviously have to dismiss you. Remember that your home learning, since it's the beginning of the semester, I'm not going to be too harsh on you guys with home learning. So what I want you guys to do is to strongly encourage you to continue on reading. I want to launch my little young readers here in this class and continue on reading chapter 3, chapter 4, even reread chapter 1 and 2 if you need to. Remediation. If you guys need any kind of help, remember I'm here from 3:30 to 4:30 right after school, and you guys can join me for an hour. It's completely free. I'm here. Any questions that you guys have, you guys can come up to me and all this. All right, my little students, this has been great. Great first day of class. Glad to have you guys back from winter break. I wish we could go back to winter break, but we cannot. So break off into your groups, and I'll see you around.